Queen has died at the age of 96 and her first son Charles is now the King. In the next few minutes on WION, we will give you a detailed course of events that will follow. What happens next? Leading up, of course, to the Queen's funeral in around 11 days' time. The official announcement from Buckingham Palace has already been published, but before it was hung up, it would have been preceded by a call cascade, with the Prime Minister personally informed by the Queen's private secretary. Now, after this announcement is made, flags across the royal residence, the Whitehall and other government buildings were lowered to half-mast. Meanwhile, on day one of the mourning period, which begins today, ceremonial gun salutes are expected to take place at Hyde Park and at Tower Hill, followed by a minute of national silence. The new monarch, King Charles III, is also expected to conduct his first audience with the UK Prime Minister, after which he will meet the Earl Marshal to officially sign off on the funeral plans. The state funeral is expected to be held in 10 days' time. And after all the formalities regarding the proclamation of the new king are done, the coffin is then expected to leave Balmoral and be taken by road to the Palace of Holyrood House in Edinburgh. There will then be a ceremonial procession which will be attended by members of the royal family, after which the service will be open to public for 24 hours. The coffin is then expected to be flown to London, but before the coffin arrives, there will be rehearsals for the procession of the late Queen's coffin from Buckingham to Westminster Hall. It is expected that the coffin will be borne on a gun carriage and later be transferred to state hearse and travel to Windsor thereon. After a procession through Windsor, a committal service will be held at St. George's Chapel, Windsor Castle, during which the coffin will be lowered into the royal vault. I'd like to introduce my guest at this hour. We are now being joined by James D.J. Brown from Tokyo. He is an international affairs expert. James, you're joining us from Japan, of course. Asia woke up to the news of the Queen's passing. Political leaders, including Prime Minister Fumio Kishida, have expressed deep sorrow. He says that the Queen contributed to strong UK-Japan ties. Tell us more on that.
Yes, well, I think for Japan, as for so many countries, when the Japanese think of Britain, one of the first things that came into their mind was Queen Elizabeth. I think also for the Japanese, having their own royal family, they felt that very much there was something that they had in common with the British. And so I think that within Japan, there's very much a feeling of genuine sympathy and understanding for what is taking place in Britain at the moment. One slight kind of complication for the Japanese government is that at present, they're planning their own state funeral, that for former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. So that's perhaps disturbed their plans a little bit.
Right, James, you're also a British national. I want to start by asking you about the legacy which Queen Elizabeth leaves behind. Tell us about some of the big milestones of her reign in your view.
Well, I think that in a reign of 70 years, there are just so many. And above all, she really just was a fixture within British life, and defined so much of what defined the second half of the 20th century for Britain. And for many British people, it just will feel so strange that there is a new monarch, that it is no longer Queen Elizabeth that's the head of state. So I think really a sense of a change in era for the UK.
There's also a lot of debate of late about the relevance of the monarchy in this day and age, and yet The Queen was seen as a symbol of unity in troubled times, as a reference point of sorts. What explains the British people's bond with the Queen?
I think it was just genuine affection that she did the job for 7 decades and did it in an absolutely expert way. The role of the head of state in the UK is to stay out of politics, to be a symbol of unity, and to be as active as possible in making yourself seen around the country. And she did that tirelessly. I've seen the Queen in person, albeit from a bit of a distance, and I think that millions of other British people have had the same experience. So I think that those qualities meant that there was huge affection for her. And the real challenge for King Charles will be whether he can replicate that.
James, as we understand, Britain has entered a mourning period of 10 days now. What happens next?
Yes, so all of the plans go into place for the funeral and the coronation that will take place as well. And given that the Queen was 96, these plans have been in place for a very long time. So the expectation is that everything is already planned out, that it should go very much smoothly. Also, this, of course, is not just an event for the UK, but for the other countries, of which Queen Elizabeth was the head of state, and also for other countries to simply want to pay their respect. So it will be a huge diplomatic event, as well as one for just the UK domestically.
James, we often hear of the cliche, heavy is the head that wears the crown. There is a new monarch, King Charles III, a controversial figure to say the least. How will his monarchy be perceived?
It's very difficult that having been, waiting for this role for so long, he's had a long and active life. There's some good elements of that. He's certainly done plenty of charity work, but there are also significant controversies. I think many British people of a certain age have not entirely forgiven him for what was seen as the bad way in which he treated Princess Diana. He's also been outspoken on many subjects. And added to that, he takes the crown at a difficult time for the UK, with all of the talk about rising energy prices, high cost of living, difficult time for the UK economy. So he's going to have to work really hard to gain the affections of the British people, and also to, I think, head off calls for an end to the monarchy in other countries where he will be head of state.
Absolutely. James, you mentioned the crisis that the UK is facing currently. There's a geopolitical conflict, an energy crisis, a cost of living crisis. There is a new Prime Minister in power, and now the sad news development that has come of the Queen's passing. Explain to our viewers the relationship between the monarchy and 10 Downing Street.
Yeah, that it has become very established. There are clear sets of rules. There are also just established practices. And so when you have a new government taking power, you have the outgoing Prime Minister making the visit to the Queen, as it was, to the monarchy, and then the incoming one following afterwards. But the Queen's role, or the King's role now, is very much as someone to listen and to provide some thoughts, but not to actively involve themselves within the running of government. So there's a very clear division of power, and I'm sure that King Charles will avoid overstepping it.
Right. Just a final question there, James. We have global tributes, condolences pouring in from leaders across the world. The Queen essentially was also the Queen of diplomacy, as she was known as. She was a symbol of unity. How will this all affect geopolitical conflicts that we are seeing in this day and age?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that whilst the Queen certainly did her best to encourage improvement in relations between countries, that was always done in a very sort of soft way. So I don't think there's going to be any huge kind of geopolitical implications. And in terms of continuing to meet with foreign leaders to play that diplomatic role, of course the new king will want to continue that, since he has been the heir for so long. since he has in recent years taken over some of the responsibilities of his mother, he's well prepared for that task. So I think that his hope, at least, will be that he continue to play that diplomatic role too.
Absolutely. James, thank you so much for all those insights, and thanks for joining us on WION World is One at this hour.
Thank you.
WION World is One is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news updates on the move.